My name is Rob van den Berg. I'm the Director of Evaluation of the Global Environment Facility. Just last week we presented the first report of the 5th overall performance study to the replenishment meeting in Paris. And we're very proud of this report because it contains a lot of evidence on impact that the GEF is achieving over time. And this is a first actually. In previous overall performance studies we were able to go into progress towards impact, how this is starting up, but the evidence is now there. And we want to show you through a series of videos some aspects of how impact is achieved and what the difficulties and challenges are. Last week in Paris we presented the first report of OPS5 to the replenishment meeting of the GEF. And what we wanted to do there is show how the GEF portfolio is performing at outcome level and at impact level. And we did this by showing all the completed projects of the GEF, then show that of these 80% had satisfactory outcomes, whereas 80% also went on to have an impact, but I put a dotted line around this because the circumstances differ between these projects. If we look at local impact as compared to system impact, we note that 70% of these projects have local impact. But it's really at the broader adoption level where things would go on to have an impact on the system that we face constraints. But it's 80% of the project that face these constraints. So 80% of the projects could potentially go there. If we then look at the projects that are unsatisfactory, we say don't bother too much about these because these are necessary risks that you take to achieve the other arrow, which is going from outcomes to impact. And this is the challenge that the GEF faces. How can this be speeded up? And how can we increase this broader adoption, leading to transformational change of systems? One thing we wanted to show the replenishment also through this OPS5 report is the time horizon of actions and when does it really start making a difference. And to make sure that we fully capture the slow trends in environmental systems. This example gives you a biodiversity loss in an ecosystem. It shows that trends continue to go downwards over time and then we have a slow recovery. But some local action started up in the beginning and the stakeholders became active. Still the trends continued downwards and then we see gradually over time a slow recovery. Not a full restoration but a slow recovery. How does the GEF interact with all of this? First of all, the GEF looks at the eligibility of GEF support to this specific problem. It then formulates a project. This project is funded, it's implemented. But after the project ends, there is no longer any GEF support. So we are interested to see what happens right at the end of the project and later on. If we look at that, first of all, on local impact, we have evidence that this can take place rather quickly. If we measure, for example, the abundance of one species of birds, here is an example of the Danube Delta, you see that when the project started, the numbers of birds had gone down dramatically and then it takes off again and at the end of the project you have a clear impact on this one species. However, it's not that easy for the ecosystem as a whole. Is what we find in our evaluations. So if we look at how things develop over time, we can plot the local species and see that there is a quick and fast increase. But at the same time, we see that the system is slow to recover. We have indicators for this and measurements, and we see this happening. If we then start measuring at the end of the project, we basically identify that at project end some local impact is visible, but no system impact. 5 to 8 years later, we see some system impact emerging. And these are the time horizons that we need to take into account. If we compare this to what is happening in climate change, again, here the problem is global warming. Trends continue to go downwards, and unfortunately, globally, there is no evidence of reverse trends yet. But if we look at a specific project that tries to turn this around through reduced greenhouse gas emissions, we can put a graph that sees a dramatic downturn in GHG emissions for this one project. And we have local impact in reduced greenhouse gas emissions at the project end, again at this end stage of the project. If we look at the system in which this project operates, which is the market for energy products, for example, we see a much slower curve. And at the end of the project, there's nothing evident yet. But in 5 to 8 years' time, you can see market change appearing. Unfortunately, in the case of climate change, we know that global GHG emissions continue to increase. So what did we conclude from all of this? First, something that I haven't yet mentioned in any of the previous videos, but the evidence that is emerging shows that there is an increase of integrated projects that are multifocal area, that are synthetic in nature and programmatic in nature. And this we see as a very positive development in the GEF, and we would like to support that this goes further. The second conclusion is that, as I've shown to you, the challenge of the GEF is really speeding up progress towards impact at the system level. And this could also be further improved and strengthened in GEF strategies. So the recommendation that we formulated for the replenishment meeting was that both this multifocal area aspect and the broader adoption leading to systemic change, that they would be included in the further work that is being done to develop strategies for GEF6. And I'm happy to report that the replenishment meeting approved this recommendation.